God and money, as Russ mentioned. I've loved just getting to go to all the midweeks. I've never taught women's midweek before, especially 3 times in a row. But it's been encouraging to just see a lot of you that all over our church, really. That I love our group on Sunday. It's just hard to see a whole bunch of people, so I'm glad to get to have a little more extra fellowship. And this is being recorded. I know Larnie mentioned he recorded on his phone for the sake of some people in his small group that couldn't be here. Russ is video recording it. That's a little scary thought for me, but amen. Thank you. And I do want to encourage you to share this stuff, not because it's from me, but because it's from the Bible. And I think it's really important stuff about not just money, about our hearts. So, hang on to this. We're going to start looking at this in just a minute. If you weren't here last time, 2 weeks ago, we talked about a very heavy topic. We talked about greed. And a lot of scriptures that I think were sobering. How God views, how we view what we have. And we made the point, really, it's not about how much you have. I mentioned visiting some friends in LA. The Zillow estimate in their house is $17 million. Well, it's not the kind of place where any of us live. Most of us live in pretty middle-class places. But some of us go to places in the world where people live very, very meager surroundings. It's not what you have, it's what we do with what we have, how we view what we have, how we use what we have. And I hope that principle stood out last week. Let me say some things. I got to tell us some humorous things, hopefully, just to get us loosened up here. As we think about finally tonight, I'm sure you've already seen the topic, how much should I give? Okay. A couple was having a discussion about what to see and do since they had arrived safely in Florida on their honeymoon. The husband was trying to assert himself right off the bat. So he said, if it weren't for my money, we wouldn't be here at all. And the wife replied, if it weren't for your money, not only would we not be in Florida, we wouldn't be on a honeymoon, nor would there be any we. You can figure out what she was saying. A few observations. A study of economics usually reveals that the best time to buy anything was last year. I like that one. An economist is an expert who will know tomorrow why the things he predicted yesterday didn't happen.
That's right.
I like this. Why did God create stock analysts? In order to make the weather forecasters look good. All right, finally. All right. A guy heard a sermon on Psalm 52, 3 and 4 about lies and deceit. He wrote the IRS, I can't sleep, knowing that I've cheated on my income tax. Enclosed is the check for $150. If I still can't sleep, I'll send the rest. Well, amen. I wanted us to start with this passage in 2 Corinthians 9. And this is in a bigger context of Paul talking to the church in Corinth about what we would call a special contribution. They were collecting money to send for famine relief in Judea. 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 are just the most powerful discourse on the heart of giving. Because Paul talks about our giving ourselves first to the Lord. He talks about what Jesus has done for us. He talks about giving as a proof of our love. He talks about God's ability and desire to bless us and take care of us as we give. And in the middle of all that, he says something really practical. A man should give what he's decided in his heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all you need, you will abound in every good work. And he goes on, and when you read the following passage, with that thing that we talked about in the very first week, we hurt ourselves when we don't give. But Paul said, look, I want you to give what you've decided to give. I don't want you to give under compulsion. Let me say this. The things we're talking about in these 3 weeks and tonight, we're not trying to harass, cajole, pressure any of us to do anything necessarily differently from what we're doing now. We are trying to get to our heart, though, about this stuff. I heard somebody say one time, God loves a cheerful giver, so I'm way more cheerful when I don't give much, so God's happy. I don't think that's the point that Paul is making here.
Okay.
I probably mentioned it someplace along the way that, we have 9 grandchildren, and they're awesome. The oldest will be 19 next month. That's crazy. Last week I was in the car with the youngest, little Dossie, who's in kindergarten. And we were having this conversation. I don't remember the context of how it happened, but I said, your mom was my little girl. And then she grew up. And Dossie said, well, I don't want to grow up. I said, well, why? Why don't you want to grow up? She said, I don't know. And then she said, ice cream. I said, you think you can't have ice cream when you grow up? She said, I don't know. We didn't pursue the conversation any farther. There's some reality, though, of, she probably will have to view ice cream a little bit differently when she gets grown up than she does now. I want us to think about some reality tonight of you can see here what we're trying to do, how things are set up. I hope to give you some information that I think will help us understand what we're doing, why we're trying to do it, and just some very practical things. So I'll pose some of this in the form of some questions. For example, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to do as the Garden State Church? Or certainly the bigger picture of the New York City Church of Christ, but it's just us and New Jersey. I think it was Rob Novak that came up with kind of this catchphrase that I really love: planting Christ in every community. That's what we're trying to do. You saw those charts that Russ showed of all the 8 counties in the northern part of New Jersey, and where we're all clustered together, where we live. And places, not just the far west places that are very sparsely populated, but places in the population areas where nobody lives from our church. We're trying to plant Christ in every community. It's not about ministry people. It's about each part doing its work, but we do need more full-time ministry people. I don't know if you really realize, for example, that we in New Jersey are very unique in the whole New York City church, in the ministry staff that we have. Now, we're by far the largest region. We've got about 200 people more than the Bronx, and we're more than twice as big than any other region, about 3 times as big as a couple of the regions. We've got more than 600 people. And it's because we put some groups together, and then people have become Christians and a lot of things. And we are very blessed that we have the Murdochs and the Lippincotts and the Novaks, and we've got the young people. Shauna Gill, who just met Cold Contact on college at Montclair State, who became a Christian, is trained for the ministry, is in the ministry helping other young women. Matt Rupert, who grew up in our midst, who's now in the ministry. And we've got a full-time intern, Sam Lee, and we've got some part-time interns who are hoping to go in the ministry and helping. And we've got now even our interns. We're training them to go someplace else. We can't keep all these people in New Jersey. Who knew that New Jersey would become kind of the training ground for the rest of the church? God did that. It's encouraging. It's exciting. But let me tell you, in our whole church, the New York City church, there are about 250 teens. 34 are baptized. Unless some have been baptized since a week ago Friday when I put this together. That's not good, is it, guys?
No.
Now, it's not an exact science, and it takes there are a lot of factors involved to help people become Christians. There's parenting, and there's just a whole bunch of stuff. But do you know, in the whole New York City Church of Christ, with 250 teams and 10 regions, we have 3 full-time and 2 part-time staff people working with youth and family. And guess where 4 of them are? Here in New Jersey. There is so much work to do. It's not just about that. You know, our youth and family ministry, we are trying to involve, and I believe we have parents, in a sense, more engaged than ever before. We've got parents studying with other parents' kids, and we've got mentors, and we've got a lot of stuff. But I'm telling you, having raised kids and now having 14 grandchildren, we still need young people, boots on the ground, helping our kids. And we're training up young people, but it takes money even to put them on. We have just so much to do. Our campus ministry, how many of you became Christians as pretty direct results of the campus ministry? Okay, half the group. Half the group. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of college students there are, both in New Jersey and in our metropolitan area. Rob can tell you, because Rob keeps up with this stuff. Our whole church of 10 regions, we have 2 couples and 2 single women, one of whom is an intern, not even really a full-time ministry person, working with campus. How are we going to do this? We are working as hard and fast as we can to train up young people without taking shortcuts in their training, to be able to put them in the ministry. But it takes money to do that. And I'm just saying, that's just a little bit of what we need to do and what we want to do and what we're trying to do. And God has placed us in arguably, and sometimes I don't even want to say arguably, one of the most significant metropolitan areas, not just in the United States, in the world. People come here from all over the world. A lot of you, or your parents, or we come from all over the world to this part of the country. And we've got such opportunities. We need to do more financially to be able to do more. Why did God set it up that way? I don't know, probably because of the need for our hearts to be touched, you know? That's just an example. Let me talk about how the church budget is set, because I think this is a significant thing that you need to know. I'm giving you a lot of information tonight, and we're going to have some time for some more reflection and sharing, I hope. We make a budget because we got money coming in, and you know, like maybe in your family, you have to figure out your priorities and what you're going to do with it. It's a little deceptive when you look at the numbers in our newsletter, and I'll tell you why in a minute. You know, Louis and I both serve as elders. We're both on the board of the church, so we're very aware of how all this works. We make a budget basically according to what we did last year. You follow what I'm saying? In other words, we don't say, our church averaged $106,000 a week last year, so let's up it to 120 and let's hire some more people. That's not fair to those people. It just, you know, you can't say, okay, I made X last year, I make the same, but I'm going to up my budget. Well, you can't up your budget without upping your income. You follow what I'm saying? Right. And by faith, we believe we can do more, but reality-wise, we've got to say, this is what we did, so this is what we're going to budget. You follow what I'm saying? Right. Then we take that, this number, and it's divided among our 10 regions. It's not divided by 10. Why is that? Well, we're the biggest. We got the biggest chunk. It's divided basically by number of members. So the smaller regions have a share. The bigger regions, we have the biggest share of what is needed every week because we're the biggest region. Now I'm saying that because if you look at I happened to pick up a newsletter. This is last week's. This is February 18th. Okay, we put in here a weekly goal. Our weekly goal currently is $23,666. Where does that come from? That's our piece of the bigger budget pie. You follow me? Now, you can see, okay, well, great. We up here, a couple of weeks, we exceeded it a little bit. Awesome. Let me tell you something, though. I don't know if this is a good way to do things or not, but our current budget projects a deficit of about $140,000 this year. How can we do that? Well, we've got a little money set aside, and somehow God keeps helping us, but because we try not to use it. Again, you know, when you have a little bit of cushion, you can't use it all up, but what I'm saying is, when we look at this and say we met our budget, we met our goal, but we haven't really met even what we're currently doing. You follow what I'm saying? Now, so far it's been a good year. Sometimes summer tanks, so let's don't tank this summer. So far, we're ahead, so that deficit's going to be wiped out pretty soon, and we'll be in the black, and we can talk about people we need to hire and so forth. But what I'm saying is, when you look at this and say, well, we met this. Well, even if we did, we're not really meeting what we're doing. You follow me? I just want you to know that so that we're not kind of have a false sense of we're doing great. You know, it's talked. So our target goal does not even, when everybody in the church meets their target goal, we still haven't really done what we are trying to do every year. And at some point, you know, something's got to happen. Again, God has done things we couldn't imagine. One year we had a deficit projected, and somebody who used to be part of this church, who lives in another part of the country now, and another congregation, came in a bunch of money and gave us $100,000. Well, thank you, Lord. We couldn't, I mean, you know, that's not something you call up somebody and say, I heard you got a bunch of money. Can you used to be here 20 years ago. Can you help us out? I mean, I'm saying I believe God takes care of our church when we're trying to do what's best. Okay. But I want you to know that this budget thing is tricky. It's tricky because it doesn't really reflect what we want to do even. It reflects what we're doing, but not even quite that. Okay. Now, I just want you to understand that. The next sentence in red is, what is our giving reality? Okay, I want to talk about two things here. One, I want to talk about, well, really three things. Consistency, and who gives, and how much we give. Because again, I think we need to be educated about these things. Giving reality. For example, when we have a special service, I put a strong statement here, but we generally do very, very poorly. What do I mean? Don't you love those expo services? I do. I mean, Gary works really, really hard, and a lot of people serving behind the scenes. But it's so encouraging when the whole church gets together and we sing. And you know, one time we had that and we found out that people were trying to break down the sound stuff right away, wanted us to get out. We're like, stop. No, we're all here. We're not leaving. We came here to fellowship. Don't run us out. And we had to make sure the next time there was some different understanding about that. Let me tell you one thing. You have any idea how much it costs for us to have an expo service over there in Secaucus? Not in Manhattan at the Javits Center anymore. In Secaucus. About $80,000. It's a lot, isn't it? Some of you in the corporate world know when you have stuff, it just costs a lot of money. Because we rent the place, and then we have to rent the chairs, and we have to rent the sound, and we got to, now, I wish we had more of them. But it just costs too much. But also, except for the last one, what has without fail, except the last one, happened? Say our church budget is $106,000. That's what it was a week last year. And we pretty much did that. Those congregational services, we usually give about $60,000 or $70,000, not $100 and something thousand. What happens? And it does not get made up the next week. That's a whole nother issue. I want you to understand. Because we in New Jersey, okay, we can't affect what happens in the whole church, but we have a responsibility for what happens here. And I want you to know, I appreciate some of you, you know, we go to some effort to put these numbers in the newsletter. I appreciate some of you look at them and notice it and think about it. I appreciate, Russ said a while ago, I want you to hear, we're taking up our normal contribution at the marriage retreat. Why not? We got 135 couples there, for goodness sakes. When we have a house church Sunday or a park service, which we haven't had in a while, we're going to have one Labor Day weekend, the community worship service, our contribution, what comes in is what is given electronically, which is great. And I made myself a note for Sherry to put in the newsletter again. We get about half of our contribution now electronically, and that's awesome. But we don't make up the rest. The last community worship service, our budget is about $24,000 a week. We gave about 13 at the community worship service because we didn't collect contribution. That was the electronic. What should have happened the next Sunday? Should have gone way up. It didn't. It was the same 24. I'm glad we had the 24. Look, how many of us can miss a week's pay or even half a week's pay and it doesn't make a difference? I mean, I want you to think about it that way. We have obligations. I'm telling you, we don't have a lot of fluff. We're in the hole. And it's okay because we'll come out of the hole and there's some deliberate, thoughtful, prayerful decisions about that. It shouldn't be that way, should it, guys? That we don't, if we're not there. I mean, look, can you call your mortgage company and say, I was on vacation for a week. I didn't use my house. So I'm deducting a week's worth out of that. Do you call the whoever finances your car and say, it was in the shop 2 weeks, I didn't drive it. I'm taking off 2 weeks of my payment this week. Life doesn't work that way.
No.
We've got a community worship service coming up. We've thought about trying to figure out a way to give. If we have more of these, we can. It's just very, very complicated of 45 places to meet and putting it in envelopes and sealing it and getting it to one place to count. It's just very complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated if we just do what we need to do, right? Just make it up the next week. Let me tell you something that was so revealing. I'm on the, what is our giving reality? See where it says on a given Sunday? Let me tell you what happened. Our administrative team, the church office, they've done this twice. They took a Sunday, kind of a normal Sunday. What I mean by that, no region was off at a retreat. No region was having house churches. It was kind of a normal giving Sunday. This one happened to be May 17th, I think, of this past year. So a few months back, not that long ago. They didn't track who gave what. That was not the point. I mean, some of you on the count team, their deposit slips and so forth. But they weren't looking for who gave what. Here's what they were trying to figure out. One thing, how many people gave by check or electronically? How many people gave by check or electronically? On this particular Sunday, 162 of us, there were 162 checks or electronic giving that came in. Now, because they weren't tracking who, I understand some checks represent two people, right? Our electronic check represents both of us. We don't do it separately. So, in trying to evaluate how many of those checks represented two people, They figured our electronic or check giving represented about 235 members on that Sunday. Now, we had at that time 619 members, which means 37% gave by check or electronically. What are some conclusions you can draw from that?
A lot of people didn't give.
Okay, yeah. Honestly, guys, people who give cash don't give very much. There's nothing wrong with cash. How can I say that? Because the count team will tell you, the cash that comes in every week in the basket, it's between $1,500 and $2,000. Usually closer to $1,500. That means a third of our people are giving back cash, an average about $5 or $6 a person. If you just look at it that way. Generally, people give back cash. It's what's in your pocket. What, you got a 5, maybe you got a 20. People don't give hundreds of dollars by cash. Generally. Maybe you do. If you give $500 a week by cash, amen. But, that's it. We don't have those kind of cash. The people that some of you count, it's just a bunch of 5s and 20, So here's what I'm saying, guys. A third of us are giving about 90% of what is given.
Wow.
Isn't that what these numbers say?
Yeah.
It's not just in New Jersey. This was a pretty consistent picture across our whole church. This is the second time we've done this. It was a pretty consistent picture. The other time too, that about 90% of what is given by about a third of the people. That's not even to talk about whether we're giving what we ought to give. That's just the reality of what comes in. I'm telling you, we're going to get some thoughts and comments in a few minutes. One sister last week when I did this in this room, she stood up and said, "I'm giving and I'm mad at y'all because you're not giving." Wait a minute, sister, you said it, not me. Guys, I don't know what you think about that, but I don't think that's right. That the most of what's given to God, back to class 1, is given by about a third of us.
Wow.
All right. And again, what comes in cash is a small amount. It's not even 10% of what comes in. So it's not like the other 2/3 are given just huge amounts by cash. Okay. So that's something just to really think about, honestly, because we're all in this together. Now, another question, another issue. And I'm not just, guys, I like being happy and good news and all this stuff, but I want us to understand the reality, particularly as we've talked about all this stuff about the heart and what God expects and what God's given us. All right, the next red question: are we giving anywhere close to a tithe? Now, don't go off on me yet about this. I understand. The New Testament, I said last to the women, the New Testament doesn't talk about tithing, and some sister came and set me straight right quickly where Jesus talked about in Matthew 23 about you, the Pharisees, you tithe your men. No. What I meant to say, the New Testament doesn't command tithing like the Old Testament did. When you get into the letters of Paul and so forth. I think there's got to be a reason for that. The Old Testament was very specific about the tithe being given. And we talked about that. It was given to God to support the Levites. The New Testament doesn't say you have to do that the way the Old Testament does. Now, I'm going to say, I got a conviction about it though. We're under the new covenant of grace and mercy and love, and so am I free to do less? That makes no sense to me, guys. Well, I don't have to do it now. No, you don't have to. It's about the heart.
Right.
But I don't believe Jesus died on the cross to set us free from the old law so we can do less. That's just my opinion, but just bear with me a minute about this. Where are we? Just our group. All right, January 2018. Our average giving in New Jersey for those 4 Sundays was $37 a member. Okay, how do you figure that out, math scholar?